we will, cool. And we will be passing in our client ID and client secret in the body of the request. Our grant type will be client credentials always, because that's what we're using here. That's the type of authorization that or authentication, sorry, that we're requesting when we're using a client ID and a client secret. And then the scopes that we're requesting, there's a whole list of them here. And I had also explained last time, if you remember, that we want to try to keep this narrowed down to only the scopes that we're using with that call that we're planning to make right then. Usually you would get a new access token every time you issue a request to one of those endpoints, and you would only request the exact scopes that you need. For the purposes of demoing and using Postman and stuff like that, especially since, you've got to copy and paste this value from your access token and whatever, it's totally fine to just request all the scopes and use that one token for everything. So I'm going to go ahead and send this request. And when I send this, you'll notice that I get back my access token value. It tells you when it expires, the token type is bearer, and the scopes that we were granted. And it will only grant you, first of all, what you requested, and second, what you're allowed. So if you request something that you're not allowed to have, it'll actually return an invalid scope. It's not like it'll give you an access token and just not include that scope. It'll say invalid scope and not grant you the access token at all. So I'm going to copy and paste this access token into my variable for access token. And now I'm going to do, this is the request that we were working with last week. This is for getting the customer. And if you remember, it has the parameters on there where I can search by a name, by a social security number, which is here as TIN, and then TIN type of S would be a social security number, but we had talked about just using an asterisk to be able to search through all the types. And if I send this, I'll be able to get my list of customers back. And you can see I've got Sam Adams in Paducah, Kentucky, and Sam Puckett, because I searched for Sam, right? So it's giving me anybody that meets that criteria. So here's the new part. Well, we're going to post an interaction now. And to do so, as you saw, the request body requires that you send in a client ID. So I'm just going to grab one of these IDs. I'm going to grab it off of Sam Puckett. And I think I might have his in here. Yeah. So I'm going to post an interaction for Sam Puckett. And I've got, once again, I used my variable here, but this is the same beginning part of the URL that the get customers used, right? They're both through that sandbox. So we're going to hit the sandbox /clients/interactions. We're going to send this in the body. And I didn't show this last time, but here's how we use that access token, right? I remembered that I forgot to show you on you can set it here through authorization by selecting bearer token and then putting your variable here. You can also set it manually by creating just an authorization header. You'll notice that it built that out for me. So basically, if you put it here, all it's doing is creating the header for you. If you're writing it manually in your code, this tells you exactly what you'd have to do. You'd add an authorization header, you'd say the word bearer, and then your token. So the other things that are on this request, most of these headers were auto-generated by Postman. I did have to change the content type to application/JSON. That's something you can see. I think I showed you at one point how you can get basically everything you need to build the Postman requests from this sandbox site somewhere, right? So it shows you here when I got ready to issue that test call, all these different headers that it put on the call for me, one of them being the content type of application JSON, so it knows what to expect. And then other than that, you can get the URL from here. You can get all your parameters that get built into the query, and then like the body that you have to send. They also added some information here that wasn't there before to talk about what these values are. I remember we didn't know what pinned was, so they've added some little descriptions. Probably the most useful things here are the character limits, just so that you're aware of those. And the date format is very specific. They did let me know that this is the only format that'll accept right now. They're planning to change that, but just FYI, send the date like that for now. Let me go back to my postman guy. So now I've got my body of the request, and I just copied this more or less exactly from the site, except that I filled in my own values for the customer ID. I changed it to use that one that we got from the query. I changed the type to just be inquiry, the subtype. I made up request for callback, date from today. I'm going to go ahead and pin it. And the note that I wrote for the interaction was test from Postman 826. So this is free text of up to 8,000 characters. So we could really make this anything we wanted. Like if they wanted to enter an account question or something, this would be the free text that they enter when they, for their whatever their account question was, basically. So I'm going to send this, and I should still have my access token. It shouldn't be expired yet. And I got back a GUID. So this is telling me that it posted successfully. So this is what you'll be able to see. We don't have anything built right now that you'll be able to do a call and get back the interaction that you created, but I can go look this up in NewPoint. Let me see, what was this guy's name? Sam Puckett. All right, and I'm already on bank 620. So I'm going to do a customer search. Is that how you spelled it? Yep, there he is. And here's my interaction that I posted at 5:56, right? So you can click on this and get a little bit more information about it. Mostly all you're going to see here is the interaction was created, the note was added. You can see it was created by external, which I'll go into that in just a second. And it was pinned. So the pinned keeps it up here. So if they had a bunch of interactions, they would all be listed down here. But because we pinned this one, it's going to be right up at the top until they unpin it. So basically, once they change the pinned, it's no longer pinned at the top. And now if I go here in the history, it'll show that I updated it from pinned yes to pinned no. I could have done anything I wanted to. You can actually go in here and say, this was resolved. So this is what the interactions are used for, basically. So you're going to be posting the first interaction with a note about what they were trying to get from the website or whatever. And then the bank personnel can come in here and work that interaction. They can, whatever they need to do through close. So hopefully that provides a little bit of context on what you guys are doing. And I wish there was a way for you to see the interactions, but they don't have that exposed just yet. So I want to show you something interesting with the access token. Earlier this week, as you know, at first we were just hitting the sandbox for posting the interaction. And they turned on the live calls. And I was doing my own testing with posting the interaction to make sure that it would work for you guys. And I was hitting the service calls directly. They hadn't exposed it in the sandbox yet. And I realized that we were missing some claims on our access token that we were getting from identity. So I kept getting a 403 forbidden response, even though I had all the necessary scopes. So I had to work with our dev team here to figure out what was going on. And it turns out that the method the API was using for post interaction actually requires values for name and public ID for storing that metadata that we saw along with the interaction. Remember how it said it was created by external? So it makes more sense. Public ID, by the way, is an internal identifier we use at CSI. That's like somebody's NewPoint credentials. So it was asking for NewPoint credentials and the user's name. Both of those make more sense if you think about this from the fact that like the former or like the existing use case for posting an interaction is that someone at the bank would be logged into NewPoint, they'd look up a customer, and then they'd write some note about some interaction that they had with the customer. So normally we'd be recording the name of the bank user who entered that interaction as metadata on the interaction. But for this project, we're using client credentials that don't resolve to an individual user, right? They point back to your application as like identifying what API or what application actually did that posting. So we still need those claims because they're still used for that metadata, but we're going to have the identity provider configured to add them with some default values when we're using your specific client ID and secret. And I worked with our identity team to get our client, the Code Labs client, set up so that now we'll have those additional claims on our access token, and that will allow us to post the interactions. So I want to just briefly go into how did we figure out what was going wrong when I kept getting the 403 response. So I talked with the dev team who wrote the API, and we compared their Postman calls, which were working, with my Postman calls, which kept getting the 403 forbidden. And the only difference was in the access token not having those claims for name and public ID, which right away made sense to us, but oh, it's using that for metadata. But I wanted to show you guys real quick how you can examine the token here, and it's a JOT token. I think that's how it's pronounced. It's JWT token, but whenever I've heard somebody talk about it, they always just call it a JOT token. So I'm going to show you how you can examine the contents, and that will help you maybe in the future with troubleshooting something like this. Now you guys shouldn't have any more problems with this access token. We know that it works for us now, but before I do that, I'm going to grab so I'm going to get my access token, and I'm just going to show you, there's this site, jwt.ms, where you can enter your token, and it'll decode it for you. So here's exactly what is on the token. And you can see that it's got, so this is something we talked about 2 weeks ago, was it? When Matt asked, like, how will we know what bank we're on? And that kind of, oh, it's taken care of, right? The access token. Well, here's the bank number. They call it institution on there. So you don't have to worry for the scope of this project. We're not even considering the fact that they might be on a different bank because our access token has bank 620 built into it. So that's why that's not even a concern at this point for your guys' project. You can also see on here that we have the public ID of bridge and we have the name of external. And those are just the values that we chose to represent. Okay, this is being posted by an external call. Bridge is the name of our API portal. So, it makes sense. Okay, this is coming through bridge and it's an external call, and that's good enough. We don't need to identify it more specifically than that at this point. So it also gives us our scopes that we requested, and then it signs it. So it's pretty simple to come to this site and just decode that token. You can also get more information on here about what some of these other claim types are that I didn't go over. These are standard, like the audience and the issuer. And it tells you a little bit more about what each of these claim types are and gives you areas where you can find more about them. So this is very common using a JOT token like this for access tokens, and you'll always be able to just paste it right into this little thing. There's several utilities like this that are free where you can just paste it in there and decode your token. So the last thing I wanted to pass along officially, and then you guys, feel free to ask me questions or whatever, is that I think it was last week. I believe it was Zach. Sorry if I got that wrong. Asked if I could try to get you a basic description of what the prospect looks like, so you could get started on coding the ability to add a prospect, even though we don't have a call for that exposed in the API yet. So I found the method that the development team is using at one point. It may have changed, but I don't feel like there's going to be that much flex in the basic fields that are required. And they're using that to send in the body of the post prospect request. And I'll pass that along to you. I'll chat it just as soon as I stop sharing my screen, since I still can't figure out how to share and chat at the same time. And it's subject to change, but I don't know that it's going to change very much. I also want to say, though, that the list of properties on the prospect are huge, and there's no way they're all going to be required. I would guess that most of this, the more of this you can provide, probably the better, but they have all kinds of stuff on there that you'll see, like a business profile, a marketing profile. There's no way you're going to know that just from what you've collected, right, from an inquiry form. So you can assume that some of these aren't going to be required, but I don't know yet which ones will be. I have no idea really if this is even going to be available to you guys next week. So for the most part, this is just, for your reference and maybe to help you build out what you want to include on your inquiry form.
Yeah. So my goal with that, Danielle, is for
Yes.
them, even if the API isn't done, we can have some type of mock service and mock
Yes.
interaction creating prospects just to show you guys at the end of this class. So
Yeah.
yep.
Yeah,
So I
perfect.
appreciate it. Yep.
Yeah, no problem. So I'll show you here and then I'll chat it. Can you guys see this? Am I still sharing my screen? Okay.
Yes, we can. Yeah.
It's weird because like the border that showed what I was sharing went away. But anyway, so here's all the properties that are on a prospect, and like look how long this is. So there's no way you're going to need most of this. I'm assuming that probably you'll just be using like these ones at the top, probably ending with like the phone number stuff. Some of it'll probably be required, but not most of it. The name, the address, the birth date, they probably won't require gender. Um, one phone number maybe, but not optional phone numbers. An email address probably is a good idea. And then if we collect the social security number, you could put that in as their tax ID with a type of S. The rest of this, maybe first contact date. The rest of this, you may not have any idea. You may not want to request this on the inquiry form. I mean, really, somebody that's filling out an inquiry form probably isn't going to be too thrilled to provide all kinds of stuff about their marital status and all that, years of education, So I will pass this along in the chat, and you guys can build out as much of this as you think is worthwhile to collect on your inquiry form, and then the object to send for the post of putting a new prospect into our system, if that was available. And if not, then at least you'll have it done and ready to go. It sounds like that's the plan, and I think that's a great way to move forward, because this is very indicative of like a real world coding scenario you guys are getting, like, in the ultimate experience right here, where it's like nothing is defined and most stuff doesn't work when you first start trying to work on it. So
Yes. So Daniel, I've been dealing with that for the past week and a half. We have one client we have a lot that's out on production. But he keeps on changing his mind about things. So we can't move to the next step on the API side because we're dealing with not really problems, but other solutions to problems that he's having. So front end wise for me, I've been just mocking things up and working or building out models that I think will be similar to the models that we're going to have within the API. So definitely real world stuff. And I think you guys will get a good understanding of how to build something out. Maybe not, it's going to be, you might have to change it a little bit, but you can kind of think about what the backend's going to require type solution. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hope that we've done kind of a good job conveying that, like, there's always, I won't say always, but there's usually at least something you can do, right? With as little information as you have, as unready as the rest of the stuff might be, you can usually at least put together workflows, which was what we had you work on first, mostly because nothing was ready yet. Um, but I mean, you guys needed to think through that stuff anyway. So, why not get started there? And then as more stuff becomes available, you just refine it more and more. And sometimes, yeah, you might occasionally do a little bit of extra work that it turns out you didn't need. But for the most part, you can be smart about what you're picking to start on, and kind of get a good idea. Okay, we're definitely going to need this, and start writing the stuff that for sure you're going to need. And hopefully the other end will catch up to you at some point, and you'll all come together in the end with a great project.
Yeah, no manager likes hearing the words, oh, I'm just waiting on this, so I haven't done
Yes.
anything. So you got to do something.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, even if it's just like working on documentation. And I know that gets glossed over a lot on the development side. Nobody wants to write documentation. You just want to dig in and start writing the code. It's a great thing to work on when you don't know what to work on next, right? Because it gets you thinking about stuff. All right, so does anybody have any specific questions for me on any of this?
I think you pretty much covered, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, great. I think you pretty much covered everything that I was, kind of unsure about as far as the access token goes. I'll probably dive into Postman tomorrow and make sure I can get those working and, just kind of get those and try to get those successful responses back. Did you send us your email if we did have questions kind of outside of class, if we did come up with something? I think Kim, did you?
I did, but I'll put it in the chat again. Yeah, no problem. Nobody has emailed me, so I wondered. I was like, did they actually get that? Nobody has asked me any questions.
I was just thinking that, and I was like, when I came across some of these problems earlier, I was like, man, I I thought you'd sent your email, but I didn't have it. I'm like, darn it.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
if I
no
could get that,
problem.
that'd be good.
And you guys feel free to reach out. I think I shared one of these times that I've recently changed roles. I've been a developer for 13 years, and now I'm on the product side of the house doing innovation work. I just got started in that role, so this came up at a great time. I don't have a whole lot of other demands on my time right now, so I would love to get emails from you guys and help you out with any questions that you might have. And I will share my email address again in the chat, and I'll put the preliminary body that they have for the prospect post as well.
Sounds great. Thank you, Danielle.
All right, no problem. All right, I'm going to stop sharing. If you guys think of any questions, just feel free to speak up.
Yeah, I'm trying to do that.